Welcome to the Creative Prayer Book. I'm Eric Scott, and this is week number 5. I almost said 4, but we've gone through 4 different lessons, so this is the 5th lesson in this series. And it all started in this little book. I like to remind people that this is a Stillman and Byrne Alpha series book, and we've been slowly building up lots of layers in it. So over the last few weeks, we've used watercolor pencil, collage, regular pencil, and last week we used some ink. So you can really see that these pages have lots of nice layers going on with them. So last week was really about the ink creating some texture in the background and then some structure. Now, as I was working with the ink, I was trying to think what is going to be the next step? What is today's lesson basically going to be about? And I was thinking about collage. I love using collage to add images and things to it. But as I kept working on it, I realized I wanted another layer before I did collage. So I started looking at these spaces, and I really started thinking like something else could happen to them. And so I pulled out my Inktense pencils. I've used those before. I think I may have used those here. I may have used the Prismacolor. Don't remember. But anyway, what I really want to focus on today is taking the Inktense pencils and going around to help emphasize some of these structures. So I could really see having some color around the outside, and then it works its way across here. To help emphasize that structure. I could really see in here maybe the circles, kind of ignoring the rectangles. Maybe that would be kind of cool. So that's what I want to do today. And I love the Inktense pencils as I layer because they're all transparent. There's the darker colors, of course, are more opaque, but all the colors are transparent so that I can layer one on top of another, and I won't get any odd, like cloudy, filmy kind of colors because of white. So a lot of the watercolor pencils use a white to make like a light pink or a light blue, but the Inktense don't. It's just a water-soluble ink pencil. So since I'm open to this one, let's go ahead and I'm going to put that back. And it looks like, I've got lots of blues, lots of greens. I use some blue back here, so maybe I want to use a green this time. So let me pull my pencils out and find a good one. All right, so I've got a Hooker's green, which is kind of a dark green, not super dark though. And again, I'm gonna, just like I've done before, I'm gonna shade around my shapes. I love doing that because that's gonna really make this rectangle look like a window. It's going to darken the background, and it'll allow the background to kind of fade together. So by putting this green all around it, it'll kind of push the background together. Now with this other one, I'm just going to go around the outside. And the nice thing with any water-soluble pencil is you don't have to be super neat about the shading. So I'm going to go ahead and just shade that in. And I'm going to go all the way across. And that's really going to help that structure because it's going to be, this is going to be regular up here. This is going to be regular. It's just going to be a little bit darker in between. So it's going to break that space up even more than just with the ink pen all by itself. So go all the way across. And again, this really helps push this collage into the background and makes it feel like it's really part of the page. All right, so got that shaded in. Let's go ahead and get my paintbrush. I got some water off camera there, and then I'm just going to spread it like I've done before. So this green is a fairly dark green. It's not super dark, but it's also a very bright green. So that's going to really help tint. So this spread was more blue. It had a little bit of green, but now by using the green Inktense pencil, I can really bring more green into this. And again, that's going to help create some structure. It's going to help break up that space. So when I talk about structure, that's what I'm talking about, is how does the image fill up the space of the page. And by using these rectangles and these rectilinear lines, I've broken up the space, but now with the green I can go in and basically fill that space in. And this is why I like the Inktense pencil so much, is that they really do allow what's underneath to show through. Unless I go really dark with a really dark color. But this green just kind of tints everything in there. So now I have this kind of nice shape, and then you could see how these two shapes really pop up. So anyway, I just want that to dry. So let me grab my handy dandy hair dryer. Okay, so that's fairly dry. Let's move on. Maybe I'll skip that. I'll come back to that later. Let's see. So again, you can see how I used a lot of the ink. So here in this one, this is mostly kind of pink and red, and the red lines kind of help break it up. I think I want to keep it red, so let me grab maybe, let's see, my poppy red, which is a nice warm red, has a lot of orange kind of in it, so it's not a cold red like a crimson, a little bit more warm. And again, by staying on one side of the line, I can really create structure. So I'm really breaking up the space. So this space here would just be a little bit darker than the rest of the spread. And like I said before, I don't have to be really super neat about how I shade that through there. And then just take my pencil or my paintbrush and spread that pencil around. So it's going to create a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of a darker value right up against the line, and it's really going to help separate the space. It's going to push those spaces apart. So one space is going to seem darker, it's going to be darker than the other spaces. And so this is creating contrast. That helps to create that structure, and that contrast really makes it look a little bit more interesting. So if this was just all flat, I mean, you can kind of see the difference. Let me get kind of halfway over and I'll show you the difference. So if you really look at this side of the page, you can see how we've got dark here and then light and light, and that's a good contrast. Over here, since I haven't painted yet, there's not a whole lot of contrast. So these two shapes don't really pop out yet. So again, if I just take my water and spread it around, so now that shape there starts to really pop out. Okay, use my hair dryer again. Okay, so that's really all I'm going to show you, but I do want to talk real quick before I wrap things up about the layers. So every week I've been kind of adding new layers. So I started off with the watercolor, and then I did some collage and some pencil, so that's 2 layers. Then I added some watercolor pencil, so I do believe I was using the Prismacolor watercolor pencils. So I did that, and then I came back last week with the ink, so that was a 4th layer, and so now the Inktense becomes a 5th layer. So what I'm going to do next time is probably do some collage. So what I would say is, once you kind of go through and you're using your, you can use watercolor pencils. It doesn't have to be the Inktense. I just wanted to show you a different material. But really like this seems like I could really put a lot of stuff around there. And again, build up, create that structure, create some contrast. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So as you're doing that, also start thinking about the collage, some more specific collage. So we were using paper and newspaper and book pages before, but now start to think about maybe some pictures. But remember, if you're doing a small book, you want to make sure that you have some small collage pieces. So I've gathered some magazines that I'm going to be using, going through and cutting up, and I'll share that with you next time. So hopefully you've been enjoying this series of lessons. So today was just about using some kind of water-soluble material like watercolor pencil or the Inktense pencils to add another layer, using those transparent materials to build up another layer to add some contrast, which helps define the structure, helps reinforce the structures of the ink that I did this past week. So anyway, thank you. I know it's a quick lesson today, but thank you, and happy creating.